No.
Well, I work on Azure, not on 365. So yeah, on Azure AD in a way.
And I'm talking about the security products like Defender, Sentinel.
Well, no, not really.
Not yet, right?
Defenders, these are all like, as I told the other client, L1, we are being involved, like, knows and does, but nothing much, on broad picture, or we don't know what is happening at the back end.
Got it.
They are there just,
All right, let me share my screen and do confirm if you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it. I
All
can
right.
see.
All right, this is a very basic PPT that I have put together. I'm basically not a PPT guy. I basically try to utilize a whiteboard application and then go through the process and architecture. But for the sake of starting, we'll start from here that you obviously are working in a cloud world where your customers might be looking for, having control over the security ecospace, especially after the COVID and especially after seeing that lots of threats have evolved and lots of different vendors are coming up, and they are basically uh, looking for your data, looking to harm your corporates information and their corporate ecosystem. So in total, any security industry tries to target on four of the pillars, uh, which is basically dependent on the cloud resources or the cloud platforms. I'm not taking consideration of the things that a company would have to take control of, like network. If it's on-premises infrastructure, then obviously the companies would have to go ahead and take care of their network. So those things are not here. But as a cloud provider, as a M365 security ecospace, what Microsoft recommends you is to basically target on these four pillars where you have users, you have devices, you have application, and most importantly, you have data. It's because the data is the most important and valuable thing, right? Because that is what we have to protect. If we are protecting users, at the end, our target is that those users doesn't somehow leak data or doesn't get compromised so that the attackers can get access to the data. So in Microsoft ecosystem, they have developed different solutions, you might say, which targets each individual pillars, so that if you, let's say, if you utilize one of the service, you are taking control of users. If you utilize other service, you are taking control of devices, so on and so forth. So coming directly to the point where, since it's a cloud platform, you obviously know, if you are talking about the SaaS, software as a service, that basically runs on a license-based model. Okay, now M365 is itself a SaaS cloud infrastructure which bundles different SaaS application together and is given via a license-based architecture. Now, the highest license-based architecture is the M365 E5 license, which is also known as EMS E5 or sometimes E5, which has all these, capabilities and independent SaaS which are clubbed together. So all these services are actually a different service in total, but they are clubbed together in this license. Obviously, if you would have been utilizing, let's say, um, the Azure cloud or Amazon cloud for your IaaS infrastructure, they have a subscription-based model. So the IaaS model works on a infrastructure as a service model, works on a subscription-based model where you align your credit card so that it gets deducted pay as you go. Like you build a VM today, you build a storage account, you build a app service, that gets deducted via subscription-based model. And every SaaS application which is present in Azure, in an M365, that gets charged to you by a license-based model. Now, in Intune, you will see that Intune, the last option, the Intune is also a part of this particular stack, which is M365 Enterprise Mobility Suite E5 license. But Intune is not actually directly related to any of these services. All others are a complete service in its own, and I will tell you how it relates to the previous slides, that we had here, that which particular things are targeting which uh, pillar. So like for users, you have Microsoft Defender for identity, you would have conditional access, which are part of Azure Active Directory Premium P1 or P2. And you have devices. So let's say if your company is managing devices, you would to have Microsoft Intune. um, SCCM is like an again on-premises solution of maintaining the service and Windows ecosystem in past. But looking at the growth of Intune, and especially in the cloud world, you want your data, you want your resources to be present at wherever the user wants it, right? So that's the whole evolution that has happened. Like my user wants this particular data to be accessible over the internet on this particular mobile device. Now you as an IT admin has to decide, okay, the user needs this data to be productive, but how do I make sure that the data doesn't get into wrong hands? So you would try to do what? You would try to make sure that the user's authentication is taken care. You would try to make sure that there are conditional access in place. You will try to make sure there is MFA in place. Okay, I have protected my users. What about the devices? So you would have devices controls where you would push different kind of policies from Intune, that okay, block USB, block camera, block share, enable BitLocker encryption. I want to see what kind of patches are installed. You want to have that kind of inventory, that kind of power within your hand to basically control the functionality of your devices. In that scenario, either SCCM or Intune comes into picture. Intune is just a MDM solution given by Microsoft. You have many other solutions out there in market, but I have seen a trend where most of the big organization, Fortune 500 companies are migrating towards Intune due to its advancement over uh, or the capability over applying a MAM. Like you don't have to enroll a device, but you can still use mobile application management to some extent. I will talk about that, how that brings on the security, okay? And how Intune is actually a very good solution in the Microsoft ecosystem, because the conditional access is one of the very important pillars where you can actually control who gets access. And in conditional access, you have option to set required device to be marked as compliant. Now that was the selling point for Intune, because only Intune was able to do that in earlier context, but now they have started giving this option to other as well, but only for Windows. uh, in apps, obviously the Azure AD is there to give you a application control where you have access, like a conditional based access to the application. You also have session-based control over the applications that can be clubbed with Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. Now, recently they have done lots of different naming changes again. The Microsoft, when it started, was Windows Intune. Uh, then it changed to Microsoft Intune. Then it changed to Endpoint Manager. Then it again went back to Microsoft Intune, and so on and so forth. Now, with respect to data, every other pillar is basically uh, uh, that they have their own boundary, right? The devices, the Intune policies can control only if you are accessing that device on that particular device. But what if I don't have that advantage? Maybe I'm trying to access a data which is not on an Intune enrolled device. What will happen to data at that point of time? Now, maybe if it's a if it's a uh, your LOB application, you would try to develop that with help of AIP SDK. AIP is Azure Information Protection, which basically is a service. It kinds of classify labels, automatically detect that this is your corporate information, and few of the things which you are writing or which you are sharing might be related to your corporate specific identity, corporate specific data, or maybe credit confirmation, or maybe health records, which ties up to a certain benchmark. So they have all this kind of automation inbuilt in them, that they are at very much capable of detecting that what kind of data is this. And if you have certain policies in place, they can avoid you to print that data, or avoid unauthorized login. That this kind of AIP RMS, and MAM is the security which goes with the data. So wherever your data goes, that the security goes. If let's say if you have a company, let's say if you are working for Walmart, and Walmart user is trying to create a Word document, and then they added, let's say, social security number, where you have already classified that as a, you know, uh, 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 a secret data or important data, and if you have labeled it as well, the AIP will be able to detect that it has detected a secret data, and it will apply policies like you will not be able to share that with any other user apart from Walmart. So even if they have access to data, they will not be able to, get it. Give me just 1 minute, okay? All right, sorry about that. So any questions so far?
That's fine.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And one more thing, I hope so you have started the recording, right? Or
Yeah,
is it?
someone started it. I
Okay, I
got a
just want to.
notification. Yeah.
Yeah. Amitra told that to ensure that recording, but I think it is already recorded. That's fine.
Yeah, I didn't start it, but I saw a pop-up.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank
All
you.
right. So let me share my other screen, and then let's start from AAD.
Uh,
Yeah,
Vipul, can you go back to the license slide for me once?
yeah, yeah.
So this security E5. So the E5 license is different than the P1 and P2 license, right? Those are two different licenses, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So
So this is where it gets confusing, because you can also get Azure Active Directory P2 directly, but if you really want to utilize, the whole ecosystem of Microsoft, like where you will be able to derive the insights, then you
mhm.
should go with this kind of license. I'll tell you how in my next,
Okay.
talk.
The
Uh,
reason every such premium P1, P2 that comes with different options, right? Sushil and
Capabilities.
yeah, people
Yeah,
capabilities and
yeah. So in one of the scenarios, you might not be able to do conditional access. In few of the scenarios, you might not be able to do auto enrollment to Intune. So all those features are where you know there are different license for that. So it's also totally dependent on what kind of security feature you want, right? Or what kind of feature you want. So that
so
basically
how it
goes.
differs from E3 and E5? I think in use cases where I don't remember this E5 being assigned to all the users in my client
Mhm,
side, where only we had most of the SD members and the technical team we have E1, whereas UK based or the client side we have given E3 because they do use mobile apps. They have the Outlook and in their mobile.
mhm.
So to allow that or kind of mobile apps, so that's E3 comes into picture for application perspective. I'm saying
Mhm.
or use cases. Whereas
So
can you give me one or two use cases to be like for E5 what it differs from other thing?
so let's say uh, you are a user, you are a very important user, you are a VIP user, and you're traveling to airport. Okay. Now, for some particular work of yours, you had to access your or not your, but let's say airport Wi-Fi, and you edited some of your Word document and then saved it. Now, what would happen at that point of time is if there were some malicious activity on your device, on your data, or on your user account, it would have been picked by different Microsoft services, right? So Azure AD Active Directory Premium P2 would have Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, right? So it would detect that, okay, this user was suddenly logged in from here. It might treat you as a risky user. And at the same time, the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint would detect that, okay, when you logged into Wi-Fi, there was a malicious application dropped in your device, but you were not aware of that, but Defender would be able to detect it. If you would have E5 license, all this security services would club together and give your IT admin an alert or a visibility that what has happened. Now, E5 doesn't do all those things. It is like 60% of this, but is not full-blown security solution that would relate everything, right? So you have user device application data, but how you relate and how you report is basically the game of license. So maybe the Microsoft would give, okay, this was accessed from here, but this is not secure if you have E5. But if you don't have E5, you would get few little information. If you want more information, you have to go for the higher version. There is also a catch. Few of the features gets allowed at the tenant level only if you have assigned E5 license to any one particular user, which is but the other users will also be able to access all those features and services, even if you have assigned only for one users. But that is not in compliance of Microsoft. And when Microsoft does an audit, it is able to find which companies are doing all these practices and might take legal actions. So that's why, since E5 is costly, you would only be trying to target the VIP users or most important users to whom
On a
you
security
want
perspective.
security perspective, totally security perspective, that you want to make sure that you get all the signals from whatever the user, whatever the device, whatever the application that he is doing or controlling. If you have E5, you will be able to see if your user logged into Dropbox, uploaded a file there. Okay. Now, you will also be able to see if your user utilized, let's say you sent an email of a PDF attachment and the user had to convert it to document, but he was like Word document and he was not able to do that. So he utilized the shadow IT practice of uploading the file to any internet online tool and then converted it. You will be able to detect that. And with Microsoft Cloud Apps, this thing, you might be able to control it as well. So I'll show you when I give you a demo, I'll show you how it makes a list of where or your users are trying to, log in and upload your data. So you have that visibility. It's totally how much secure you want your own ecosystem to be. The more facilities and the features which are giving are in E5. If you want to be more secure, if you want to know what other companies are doing in your same domain, let's say Satish, you mentioned that you work for a retail company, you will be able to see how your company is performing with the other retail services or giants all over the world. How much is your security score with respect to other companies? How much extra can you do? How much, what else you can do? No, it will give you all the things that you have to do in order to be more compliant and more security, more security oriented.
So the Defender comes into picture with E5.
E5, yeah.
Oh, not
And
with.
and I'll not go into E3. I've not seen that. Obviously, few of the things would be more or less, but you can obviously compare. There is a compare chart on internet where you can compare all the things that what is possible, what is not possible. It's up to you, your security team, or if you are in security team, then you have to analyze which are the things which is important for me, which are the things which are not important for me, right?
Yeah.
On basis of that, then you can decide. Since we are, let's say, on a retail network, right?
Mm.
Let's take, for example, what would a typical network breach or a security breach on a retail company would look like? Now, to make that happen, obviously the easy thing would be for any attacker would be to start a phishing campaign, right? A phishing email where it is able to compromise your identity. That's the first thing, right? Nobody can directly come and access your data. It always has to either via identity compromise or a device compromise. You're getting my point, right?
Mhm.
So it will always start from a phishing email. Now, when you try to do a phishing email, obviously there are very inbuilt support for Exchange Online protection, where you have Exchange Online, which is already inbuilt. It is able to detect phishing. It will tell you that, okay, this, let's say you got an email from Satish@microsoft.com. But Satish is trying to do a phishing email. So he purchased a domain which says, Microsoft, and then it has microsoftion.com. So if an end user is not that tech savvy, is easily able to understand, okay, at the rate Microsoft something, so it must be from Microsoft, but it's not from Microsoft. But if you have Exchange Online Protection, that will basically give you, okay, this domain is an external domain. Make sure that you understand the domain and then open a link or click whatever it does to trying to do so. So as a next step, what will happen? If you click on a phishing email, obviously it will try to install a backdoor application where it might compromise your device, right? It will install a malware, and then it will build a command and control center. Now, if you don't have proper technologies in place, you're not aware. You're not aware that there has been a malware installed and which is talking to somewhere outside in Russia, maybe, which is now controlling my device. You're not aware. Now, that at that point of time, a proper hacker or no normal user, there are lots of third-party security software which can do a lot of things. Like if you get access to a device, you can do a user privilege escalation. You can extract the admin ID and hardware hashes, not the hardware hashes, but the admin ID and password hashes. Now, once that happens, maybe they would install an intelligence program like a keylogger or network scanner to see what kind of a normal day of Satish looks like. What does Satish do on his whole day? Let's say Satish is sending 10 emails and having 5 calls and uploading this documents to that file server and uploading these files to this OneDrive. They will try to predict, okay, this is the normal behavior look like. But at the same point of time, if you don't have any Microsoft Defender or this kind of solution installed, there will not be any anomaly detection, right? The other user can continue to do whatever they want and will not be able to detect it. So at that point of time, your device is already compromised. Your data exfiltration can be done because they now know your pattern that, okay, on a weekly basis, you kind of upload this kind of devices. So they will do in batches and make sure they hide under the security and they hide under the radar. And maybe, you never know that they plant a ransomware after uploading all your files to some other file servers, and then they plant a ransomware, and then you get a pop-up saying that, okay, everything is encrypted, now you have to pay me this. So these are the things where the Microsoft ecosystems comes into play, because it has inbuilt different kind of mechanism to understand, and obviously this all is built on their Microsoft Intelligent Graph, which is getting events and signals from all of the 1,000 devices they have all over the world, right? So coming to let me share the screen. I think this will be much more. Please confirm again if you can see the screen. Should be there in 2 seconds. Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
All right. Just a basic understanding for me. Is everybody aware of Azure Active Directory and how it works, how the authentication happens?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. You are also aware of concept of managed and federated authentication?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Maybe if you can give an outliner, so that it
All right.
be easy for others to.
Okay, apologies, because I thought I was told that this would be a intro level, so maybe people don't have idea, but I see you guys are already experts. So, okay, I'll try
Use
to be.
cases, we do remember the use cases, but not like as in your perspective, we don't.
Okay, let me give my perspective, and you can ask me questions. Okay, so Azure Active Directory is a cloud offering similar to what we have Active Directory for on-premises, but it's not just that. Okay, just confirming if you see something.
Yeah, we are able to see
All right,
cloud.
thank you. Okay, so let's say you have Azure Active Directory, which is capable of storing your users, devices, applications. Okay, now in case of cloud world, the the idea of storing user identities is not just the function, right? It has to do n number of things to make sure the users, when they come for authentication, my Azure AD is able to authenticate. Now, typically, normally, how does a AD authentication looks like? So you go to any application which has been associated with Azure AD, or you go to a SaaS application like Office 365, Outlook, OneDrive, SharePoint Online, wherever, and you do a username and password. Now, normally what happens in a case of a managed authentication scenario, the authentication scenarios are of two kind. One is managed, where Azure AD, basically you are trusting Azure AD to store your user credential. Now, it's not obviously stored in a plain text. They obviously do a n number of iteration on that and hash, which gets stored. But the idea is Azure AD has a record of your credential in its database, so that when a user comes to office.com, let's say you are given with username and password prompt. Now, in this case, what will happen? You will enter a username, let's say satish@retail.com, if retail.com is a company. So what it does is it will pick that retail.com, and what Azure AD does is it does a home realm discovery. Now, home realm discovery is a process of finding at what domain name I have to send this request for the authentication. Now, the HRD will find that, okay, at the retail.com is sitting, let's say, because the Azure AD has many tenants, right? Thousand of tenants. It will redirect your request to retail.com, and it will be able to see, okay, retail.com is managed because I already have the username and password with me. Then it will give you a prompt saying, okay, boss, go ahead and enter your password. Once you enter your password, it basically generates the token that you want. Normally, Azure AD works on OAuth and OpenID Connect. What does mean is this is capable of giving you two kinds of tokens: access token and refresh token. Now, access token is, as it sounds, it is basically an access token for whatever kind of services you are trying to access. Let's say you were trying to log into OneDrive. It will give you an access token for OneDrive, so that you as a user are able to log into OneDrive portal and do your work. Refresh token is what? Refresh token is a token which can be valid up to 90 days. Access token is valid only for 1 hour. So that after every 1 hour, or let's say a normal typical expiry of the Kerberos would have been 8 hours or 10 hours. So at this time, what it will do is, before expiry of this access token, it will generate, it will request Azure AD. It will request Azure AD for a new access token. And as long as your refresh token is valid, it will be able to get new access token every time for your continued access. Okay, and this is how, and this is the main funda of single sign-on as well. Single sign-on cannot work if you don't have a refresh token. And then if you have Windows, it gets clubbed to PRT token, where if a user logs in on a device, in a registered device, that's get clubbed with as a primary refresh token. It has a user token plus a device token. Okay, now this is a scenario. This is a normal scenario. It looks in for the managed. This is for the managed. If you have a federated scenario, how does it work? You might have a ADFS, Active Directory Federation Services, in place, or you have third parties like Okta and Ping Identity. What they would do, is basically you are kind of saying that, okay, boss, I understand that you were giving, okay, Azure AD, I understand you were giving all this functionality, but I don't trust you with my authentication, right? I don't trust you with I cannot give you my user credential. So at that time, what will happen? The Azure AD will have to rely on any third party, or let's say Microsoft own federated service, which is ADFS, to authenticate you users. So this happens mostly in a case of on-premises scenario where your ADFS is talking to your domain controller in an on-premises infrastructure, in an on-premises AD. So in this scenario, what will happen is if your user A is trying to log into OneDrive, the request will go to OneDrive, obviously. What will OneDrive do? Now, since the OneDrive is a SaaS application, it only trusts Azure AD, right? It's not aware of your federation. It's not aware of your Active Directory. What AED does at that point of time is looks at again at the rate, let's say if it's retail.com, it will check, okay, boss, let me check retail.com in my database and see if it's a federated or managed. Now, this time it will find that, okay, this is a federated environment, and this is the federation service or federation server that these companies has registered with me. What it will do, it will then send that authentication request to ADFS. Now, ADFS facilitates in authentication. It doesn't do the authentication. Okay, so ADFS will send a request to your domain controller and will ask for a Kerberos ticket. That boss, okay, this is the user who is trying to access OneDrive. Give me a Kerberos ticket. Now the DC will give a Kerberos ticket to ADFS, but AD doesn't understand Kerberos. So what ADFS do is ADFS will convert that Kerberos token on a in a online web accepted authentication mechanism token, which is SAML. Okay, so it converts that into a SAML. That token is then consumed by AD, and then AD gives access or refresh token to this particular user. Okay, so this is the whole authentication mechanism that happens.
Okay, we can say extra one layer of adding another third party, right? Like in case of
Yes.
Okta and ping identity.
Yes.
So we don't depend only on AD based whatever the AAD and the AD sync, but
Yeah.
also we'll have another third party. And okay,
exactly.
Even in this case of not a ADFS, and if you are going for Okta or kind
Okta.
of a duo.
Yes.
Yes. So again, I think that the credentials or whatever that has been the first level, because it's going to be SSO and the same should be synced in sync, right?
And if you have to have SSO at this level, obviously there is a configuration where you have to enter the metadata to Azure AD and the other party so that they are able to understand, communicate over the same thing. Because you would have like, okay, I want users, maybe employee ID, or maybe I want users.
Like a verification.
Verification is done at this level. They basically give you a client assertion. So what that is, let's say your application OneDrive, or let's say it's not OneDrive, let's say it's a Walmart application which needs your location, okay, and your employee ID to give you some results. Okay, now if you go with this flow, what will happen is AD will send request saying, I want location and employee ID of this user. But before you get that, you have to authenticate the user. Now you would have set up Okta ADFS trust or ping identity and AD trust. Now, once you reach to your DC, that Okta will come to your DC and saying, boss, authenticate this user, but I only want location and employee ID. Okay. Now the user will get authenticated and get stamped. The client assertion will be location and employee ID. Now that gets traveled to AAD in a SAML token or whatever token that they have agreed upon. SAML is the mostly uniform token which is industry-wise utilized, but there are other token as well like WS Fed. You know, those can be used.
Yep,
So
I think overall picture is fine, but if you want to be knowing further details, the flow charts and how the transaction or communication that happens between such entities or the third parties, maybe we can refer the Google for such things, elaborative study, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Got it. All right. So this is the case of user authentication. Now, in case of device authentication, one of the most important thing that comes into picture is conditional access, right? Now, how does a conditional access work? Now, we all know, okay, you create a policy, you do required device to be marked as compliant. You select cloud apps like Exchange Online, SharePoint, and then you have access control that, okay, boss, allow access or deny access, right? But how exactly it works? Now, to give you a little picture of that, you have
Can we take a iPhone as an example if you want,
we'll take
like
iPhone as an example.
user affinity? With user affinity now, modern authentication came into
Yes,
picture, right?
we'll take that one. Okay, so you have AED here. You have, let's say, Intune sitting here. Let's say you have a device or iPhone here. Okay, now conditional access always start with application access, right? Let's say this user is trying to access SharePoint this time. Okay, so what will happen is you would have a conditional access policy which says if SharePoint is accessed, I want the device to be compliant. Everyone is able to frame it, right? Like, okay, there's a compliance parameter here. I believe you would have done it already, that how
No.
exactly this is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this device has to be compliant and I am accessing SharePoint. Now, what will happen? What will go in the request to SharePoint? Now, the SharePoint basically is not aware of your iPhone, right? At this point of time, who is aware of your iPhone if the device is Intune enrolled? If your device is Intune enrolled, Intune is aware that you have a device entry which is managed, compliant. AAD is aware because Intune would do a AAD registration of your device. Because conditional access is a feature of Azure Active Directory. In order for conditional access to pass, Azure Active Directory must know about your device. But you enrolled your iPhone where? Intune. Intune is an independent SaaS service. Azure, it is a independent SaaS service. But as a process of registration, let's say if you use company portal, what happens in the background is Intune basically does a post command to AAD, this one, where it basically updates few of the attributes in Azure AD saying is compliant equals to yes, and few other attributes like device manufacturer, OS information, OS version, and all other things which Intune inventories. Because what happens when you enroll any of the phone to Intune, what will happen? In the next 15 minutes of your enrollment, Intune service, Intune backend service is doing an inventory. It's building an inventory of all the properties that iPhone can send to a MDM client. Now it can have n number of things. You would obviously have seen in your hardware details when you go to Intune portal that, okay, it collects you n number of details. Device manufacturer name, operating system, discovered apps, all those kind of things it will collect. And few of those will get added to Azure Active Directory, which are important for conditional access. Now, in this particular scenario where you have said, I want the device to be compliant. Now, which is the most important information which Intune must send to AD? That is this particular attribute. If you do a PowerShell, if you do a graph query, you will be able to see this is the attribute name, which must be set in Azure AD against this phone record. So you will be able to see this phone in Intune and in Azure AD as well. Okay, now what will happen? You went to SharePoint saying, boss, I'm going to log in because I want to have access. Now, the first thing will happen is the authentication will happen, which we discussed above. The authentication happened, fine. Now, after the authentication is done, or maybe you would have also done a MFA. So MFA will be done. After that, what will happen is Azure AD detects that, okay, boss, I have to do a conditional access for this particular user. Now, in conditional access, they have chosen if SharePoint is being accessed, I have to see the device is compliant. Now, in my Azure Active Directory, I will be able to fetch this device details and then read the corresponding attributes which says yes. Only if it says yes, I will allow access, right? Now, one question. Do you guys know how does Azure AD is aware which iPhone is this? How exactly that happens? Any guess?
Actually, even in the Azure AD, the device would be added as like how our Windows machines, right?
But when you are starting the flow from the phone, how would Azure AD know? You have enrolled thousands of devices, right?
Mhm.
How would Azure AD know this device is
Device
compliant?
ID.
How
Device
does
ID.
Azure AD gets your device ID? Okay, so in that scenario, what happens is, and this is interactive, okay? What happens is there is a concept of in iPhone, Android, or even in Windows, everything, every application, wherever, let's say if you have a SharePoint application, when you try to access SharePoint application, there would be some broker on this particular iPhone. In case of iPhone, the broker which is supported by Microsoft is Microsoft Authenticator. And in case of Android, the broker which is supported is company portal application. Now, what is the main job of broker?
Can
The
you come
main
again
job,
on this point, please?
okay. So for
The which cases, like iOS cases, who was a broker?
Microsoft Authenticator application
Microsoft Authenticator. For
and
iOS.
for iOS, and
Okay.
for
Android.
Android, it's company portal application.
Okay.
Now, what is the use of that? Now, the broker application is only capable of extracting your device ID from this device and then send that along with the request of like, okay, this is the user ID, this is the device ID, this is the URL I'm trying to access, and these are few of my properties. This particular request will be sent to Azure AD. Azure AD will then pick up the device ID from here and then match. Do I have a device ID in here? If I have a device ID, I will be able to see if that device is compliant or not. Now, this is the main problem where many corporates struggle if they have developed a custom LOB application and they targeted to request device to be marked as compliant and they think this will work. In most of the scenario, this might not be working because in order for the broker application to access this particular device ID, your custom LOB application needs to talk to that broker application. Now, if you have not integrated that uh, broker application connection, normally how that gets added. So let's say you would have be given Intune SDK. Now, Intune SDK is obviously important if you want to develop an application which is capable of doing a MAM aware or MAM enrollment. But if your application can talk to a broker application, then it is feasible for it to get the device identity, which is stored in device. Now, iPhone makes it difficult because it stored everything in keychain. Now, the keychain access is not given to everything. When you are when you're registering the device to Azure AD, the Azure AD basically, so, okay, one more question. How does the device ID comes into picture? Who assigns this device ID? Is it Azure AD to the devices?
Yeah, because that manages Azure AD is the key one, right? Here, as in inventory wise,
Yeah,
that's
Azure AD or Intune. So you would have noticed that if you enroll a device, you would get two different IDs, one for Intune devices is device ID, one for Azure AD device ID, and both will be different, right? But it's not the Intune and Azure AD which decides the device ID. It's not this way that you enroll the device and Intune will assign a device ID. No, this doesn't happen like that. So what happens is the initiation, the enrollment request starts from the device itself. Now, the crypto service, which is uh, available on every operating system and the devices, is responsible of generating a public a public and private key pair certificate. Now you would have read this in a PKI, and this is how the everything clubs together in case of authentication and Microsoft ecosystem. Now PKI is playing an important role here, where your device would generate a public and private key pair, and the public key which goes to Intune or Azure AD for stamping becomes your device ID. How you can verify this? It is very easy to verify. If you have a Windows device, you can just go to MMC, open a this uh, personal certificate store of computer. You will be able to see the public key, which is the same as the device ID uh, in Intune or in Azure AD, and you will see that there is a private key associated with it. The private key never leaves the device. Okay, so that's how it gets associated. Now coming back to the option that since iPhone stores everything, those kind of certificates in keychain, once you register the device to Azure Active Directory, you would your Microsoft Authenticator app would only be able to access that keychain and extract that device identity and then send this in a request for conditional access. If this is not there, your conditional access will fail even if your device is enrolled. That's why you see in a scenario where your device is enrolled, but in many of the scenarios, customer would be saying that, okay, my device is enrolled, I can see this in an Intune, I can see this is compliant, I can see in Azure AD it's compliant, but still it's not giving me access. And the error would be the device is not compliant. It's because the Azure AD in the first request itself was not able to identify your device ID. So the next process did not happen because for conditional access to pass, it must need your device ID, right? Understood, or any doubts?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is a basic of the Azure AD, how exactly this does, and this is the main concept of
Do we
the
have
whole.
any flow chart or diagram like this? Because we know that we are discussing it's good now,
Mhm.
but later when on our own when we are there, handling things may not be easy. So is there any links from Microsoft that explain these architectural
No,
details?
there's none, but I can create you one.
Okay.
Okay, I can try to create one and then give you guys.
Yep. Okay.
All right, so that is that. All right, so let's head over to the demo of a few of the security features. Before that, any questions on this or
Maybe
Intune
time
part?
for Sushil.
No, it's all very clear actually, Vinay. So it's good.
Okay, one more
Sushil, you
thing.
have any use case, Sushil, you might have seen because I never came across. Mine is so simple without Windows and BYOD. Lucky
Mhm.
that as told by people, I didn't have much of noise unless the manager's asking for some changes or blah blah blah. But other than that, not from the user side. Mostly it's all without any user affinity. And only iPhones we have the user affinity. So
Well,
again, that is to card provider. So I don't have much of the challenges with the security perspective. If you want to add anything based on your side of experience, use cases, it will be much helpful for us to tag along or to kind of what will say assume things something as a example, right?
well, to be honest, I've myself worked mostly on the Windows devices, and this very simple or the basic security features we use are like again a Windows Defender, of course, then then encryption and all that stuff. So yeah, all these stuff like the conditional access and MFA, that's of course it's all included in the authenticate technology already. That's it. Like I don't know, I don't know a lot about those security features, so probably it'll be helpful when people tells us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Given
you,
I got your point, even I just wanna share my feedback. Like when it comes to use cases, 2 days before we had some challenge with the key KMS where the Azure WVDs they didn't pick up properly. What the other manager was, I was not handling that client for Intune and all. But I just, I was going through the change meeting where, they were using Intune conditional access for adding the, I think, no, configuration profile, not conditional access. Configuration profiles, they're adding the MAC key for those list of groups, AWD, or, it's AWD servers on Azure of Windows 10 model.
Mm-hmm.
So, some issue with the KMS, existing KMS. So, plan B, they were giving, skipping the KMS, or, given through Intune configuration profiles. So it seems that Intune nowadays, not only for the handheld devices, but also it's been leveraged for the Windows devices or WVD. So EUC is bigger, right?
WVD, yeah, yeah. WVD is it's always used like there are a lot of use case scenarios with WVD
Mm.
if you join it to Intune.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Intune kind of leveraging
Like
in
for
that perspective.
example, you want to enable the SSO for the SaaS applications like 365, let's say in that case. How would you do it without you have to join it to Azure AD? And you can do it like that's one of the use case scenario. Then the like if you have multiple machines, there is no straightforward image management with WVD, like we have it for other solutions like Citrix, but it's not there for WVD. So the best way to handle that is Intune, of course, if you need to push the updates or the application or anything.
That's a
So
good point.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah, so that's how it is used nowadays. And of course, hybrid joined, that was always used, but now we have the option in WVD just to only the Azure AD joined as well, like it wasn't there earlier.
Yep. Thanks for the input. People, just like, so should be having a lot of such scenarios, so it will be good, like, to include such feedbacks.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So actually, this is my um, I was not available for few months back for the training, but
Mm.
I am now, and I'll be starting a session specifically for the corporates who are working and have a corporate challenges. So not the training, but for the advanced part. Okay, you have this scenario, how to do it, what can be done, what are the those kind of things.
Next stage of training, I would say,
Next stage of
right?
training, yeah.
Not a L1, L2, but the next stage.
Yeah, not L1, L2.
Advanced.
L1, L2 also start in January because I've seen people teach Intune, but it's not, you know, it's Intune is not a single thing. You have to tell about the whole ecosystem, how it fits together. Identity is a very important part which people miss. Azure Active Directory should be the basic of anything if you want to come to Azure or M365. That's where
Absolutely,
you have
and
to start.
yeah,
If you
and that
don't understand that, yeah,
and that was the challenge actually in the training. I don't know,
yeah,
like if you know the scenario what had happened,
I
and
don't
I
know
think
about that.
Satish will also agree to that. So
Okay.
the point is when you are actually jumping onto the endpoint portal, IP
Yeah.
endpoint management portal, it's very straightforward to be honest. If you go through the
You'll get
options and
lost
all that,
actually
it
if you're not
yeah.
aware. You'll get lost, and okay, yeah,
No,
this is device, this is the configuration policy I have to deploy. Next,
right,
done.
but for me, I think that's not that difficult. The point, the whole idea is the concept, how it exactly
Exactly.
works at the background. Like looking at the options, yeah, if like we have been working on the stuff like for on Microsoft stuff for more than 10 years, so it's not a very difficult thing for us to understand looking at those options. But the
Mhm.
point is like the how identity is working in that case, like
Exactly.
right, how to utilize the maximum out of it, and then how those options we can use, like for example configuration profile or ADMX based policies. How can we I know how to use it, but how to use it
The
to
most,
at
yeah,
maximum, yeah, how to utilize it at the best, how can we exploit it, I'd say.
Yep.
That's the things that we need to understand, and that's where the training comes into the picture, and that's what we missed in our training actually, to be honest. And this identity was not even covered in that scenario because the trainer like said like it's not a part of this training. That's where the things just went wrong actually.
Yep.
So yeah,
yeah,
sorry about
I understand, but
And
yeah,
and the next level, I agree with both of you. The next level of training should be such scenario based, because L1, L2, we are getting it from Udemy or other thing, even, some recordings. That's fine.
yeah,
But when come to the understanding level, or when you are going into, to the real production, so the perspective changes, and obviously all it's kind of whatever we are getting trained or learned, it's kind of a two way of traffic. Whereas when we go into the production, obviously it is kind of a 10-way kind of, big traffic line, right? Where intersection comes, kind of, we don't know something unexpected that will come, and lot of dependencies. So it's totally mind blowing. And so that use cases, that experience, what will happen as an architecture level, that level. So that is where we need to make use of the trainer like you.
Understood, and it totally understood, because if you are already working in Intune for 8 months, that means you are working corporate, and your doubts would not be like what are the license includes and what I can do from the portal here and how to add an application. I
Yeah,
understand.
but we
So
will
yeah,
help ourselves. We don't want to waste the
exactly,
time.
yeah, exactly.
We'll help ourselves self thing, but we need this expertise of yours for the next level, like so that
So I'm not sure how this will work out. This is my first time connection with this company. I think it's JOYATRES.
mm,
So I'll be starting a batch in Jan, and that will be from scratch. Like a person who doesn't know Intune would start from the architecture, how everything fits together, and then a second batch on of that would be around your normal corporate deployment strategies, troubleshootings, and learnings. Like if a co-management, not in co-management, I wouldn't go in on-premises, but in like a BitLocker thing, autopilot. You are deploying autopilot, something is failing. How about you track it? If your ESP is taking long, how about you track it? What happens behind autopilot? What is a hybrid Azure join? Why it's important to understand the flow. If you understand the flow, you'll be able to troubleshoot it out, right?
mm.
Now, I understand Intune is not just somehow I'm not able to write. 1 minute. I believe Intune is not just the Intune is basically they have given you a SaaS, right? But it's not
Okay.
just that. For properly understanding Intune, you have to be very good with AAD. If you understand AAD, your 50% of the problem will be solved, because many of the times the condition X is the main culprit and you will not be know, okay, my device is syncing from on-premises to Azure AD, it's hybrid Azure AD join, but it's not compliant with a few of the resources. How do I do that? And the authentication part. Obviously, not every team would be, working with the same thing, but network is one of the other important aspect of Intune where it gets tricky when it comes to Wi-Fi deployment, certificate deployment, VPN deployment, how exactly it works. How does a certificate authentication works? You would deploy, normally corporate would have issues like they have deployed certificate profiles, Wi-Fi profiles, but still when a user tries to access Wi-Fi, they are getting prompt, and the corporate would be asking that, okay, why they are getting prompt? They should be automatically authenticate. No, those are kind of scenarios which they face, right? And mostly the application deployment is again, uh, it comes as a cherry on top, because then you have to do all kind of packaging, understand, okay, if I have custom LOB application, should I be taking a Intune MAM SDK route to enable MAM functionality? And how do I deploy to all these users? How do I do a tracking, right? Now, everything is there, but what about reporting? Reporting is, again, if you're working on Microsoft Intune, you would see it's a hit or miss. Sometimes you will see, okay, this is working fine. Sometimes the reporting would not be consistent. If you'll raise a support case to Microsoft, they'll always working on some next level. Okay, this platform was not great, so we are building the next version of
It
reporting.
is
That means
not
always problem.
open, like even VMware. It is not like open VMware. Certain level AirWatch will get some detail of troubleshooting commands that
Yeah,
it is what happening in the backend,
yeah.
but we really don't know what is there. It's kind of troubleshooting
You
even
and
Microsoft.
you cannot know, right? Because it's a cloud thing. So what they are doing at the back end is never exposed to us, right?
Mm.
Now they would be taking care of the Intune. If you would have under in the Intune training, you would know that, okay, if Intune is there, it's nothing but a Azure Service Fabric, right? It's built on Azure Service Fabric. Now Azure Service Fabric itself had too many limitations. I don't know why my this pencil is not.
Even reporting, as you say, we were told like reporting side, but we were expecting. See, anyone can, even 10th standard student can right click and export as a reporting. but we wanted graph at least, we have taken trainings under even JOYATRES as a separate trainer
Mhm,
for PowerShell. So PowerShell we can correlate. We know that
mhm,
the flow, as you told, we can help ourselves. But when it comes to the Graph API and certain things, that
mhm,
obviously we need like little hand holding session initially. It need not to be throughout a walkthrough, but at least
mhm,
we get comfort, and based on our capacity or time level,
mhm.
we'd be exploring things. So that didn't happen though.
Understood,
I need
understood.
to
And I think it should be a two-way thing of like I bringing at least five different scenarios, which I have seen most of the corporates come to us for help. And obviously, you at your end, what are the problems and challenges that you are facing, and where you exactly need help with? If if the course is constructed in a way that only I give you what you should be learning, that's not the good thing. It should be both ways. Okay, we both decide what are the things that we should be learning together, maybe, right?
Well, I think in our last training that's went wrong, or
Okay.
because that's we probably asked a lot of questions because we had a lot of queries. The reason was because I was working on a couple of projects at that time.
Mhm,
Satish was also new to it, and he also started working on it a few months back. And obviously, when
mhm.
we start working on a technology, we probably have a lot
I
of
think that's
questions.
why the sessions should be separate for people who are at the corporate level of working directly with Microsoft Intune. That two person who are learning Intune for the first time.
But
They should.
I think most of us would I mean, were like the people who are actually already working like at some extent on Intune. So it wasn't like it wasn't from very scratch to be honest. But when you are teaching something and we have the questions, and that's where the things actually did not go well actually, to be honest,
Oh,
because
okay.
we probably had a
30
lot of
percentage was
questions.
good
And
enough. 30,
yeah,
40% initial days were good enough, but
yeah.
the whatever the given course content, that was not taken care for the last two modules, or like these reporting and all. So with us, like me and Sushil and other team members who are there already on it, we have already the environment, and we ourselves, unlike VMware model or AirWatch, this Intune, we can create set up a lab, and it is not a big deal setting up a lab and running ourselves certain things basically.
Got
But
it.
beyond that, what as a training we take home, that is what that keep us the engagement to the next level, right? We still remember, even it's been 2 years I'm with this PowerShell training.
Hmm.
So Dawood is a trainer, but still because of him that I'm good with the PowerShell to some extent. I'm not a L3, L4, but I can manage. I can create a PowerShell script, and I need not to amend the existing. So that level of comfortness. So kind of I can be like properly trained while like driving a car, something like that. So that's the expectation.
Okay. So let me start little bit of Intune and let me know if you guys have already covered it or not. Okay. Okay. So Intune is basically built on Azure Service Fabric. Okay, Service Fabric is a microservice architecture where you have different nodes of application and cluster clubbed together, which holds your Intune environment. Now, let's say if you see device configuration, there might be a microservice at Microsoft End, which is holding the device configuration. Okay, there might be a enrollment service, which is doing all kind of enrollment, and all other services, microservices clubbed together are considered Intune. Now, what happens? You have Intune here. What? Come on, what happened to my? Okay. So what happens? You have Intune sitting over here. You have a device sitting over here. Okay. Now, have you guys gone with the enrollment flow of how exactly the enrollment happens at the backend?
Yeah, both Android and iOS. Backend means as a as a
Mm,
admin perspective,
Not the admin
like,
perspective.
but not at the
no, I think
not at
we
the
just went through the front end, not the back end, like how it
yeah,
works at the
Okay.
I
back
think
end.
so.
No,
Yeah,
no.
So the
I mean
back
to say,
end
yeah.
would be the front end would be simple. You install company portal, you authenticate, and that does a majority registration, and then
Yeah,
next.
that's it. That's it. Yeah,
No, no,
not the back end. Yeah.
that's not the that should not have been the training. Okay, What happens actually at the back end is if you log into company portal, I'm taking normal scenario, normally the enrollment will start with company portal application. Okay. Now in company portal application, you again have that username and password field, right? Now to go to this part, you would have to consume how authentication work. So I'm not going to repeat what I told you guys earlier, right? That's the authentication happens. Till that point, you are sure, right?
Mm,
How
mm,
the user got authenticated.
Yeah.
So let's say this is a user. You would have assigned Intune license. Okay. Now once, oh come on. Sorry guys, next time I think it would be much better.
Yeah, these days, people are using Hue Ion or something kind of, a device where we can write something and where, it'll be instead of using a mouse. I mean,
It's not a mouse
can,
actually. It's my stylus on my laptop,
okay,
Lenovo ThinkPad. But
okay,
somehow it's giving me trouble today.
okay.
Sorry for that. So once the authentication happens, okay, you understood the authentication that okay, if it's managed, then it will go to a different flow. It's a federated authentication. It will go at different flow.
Yeah.
Once that happens, you have a access token and refresh token, right? Till that point, you are okay. Now, but once that happens, now you have to go into Intune service. Now, at that point of time, the Intune license got checked that whether this user has a valid license or not. Okay. Once that license has been checked, the the next step which happens is AAD registration in case of mobile devices. So you would see in Azure AD portal that if you enroll a device, it will also create an entry in Azure AD saying that this device is Azure AD registered. Have you seen that? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, somewhere.
Okay. There are three scenarios: Azure AD registered, Azure AD joined, and hybrid
Yeah.
Azure AD joined.
Mm.
God. Now, AD joined can only be done on Windows machines. Hybrid Azure AD join are also for Windows. AD registered is something that you would see normally on mobile devices. Okay, so if you're talking about mobile devices, the first step of Intune enrollment starts with Azure AD registration. Now the device will go to a Azure AD device registration service saying, boss, I need to register myself to you. At that point of time, it creates a public key and private key. Now this happens behind the screen. Okay. So at that point of time, if Azure AD is well accessible, you have the valid license, it will create a entry in Azure AD saying this device is registered to me, and you will be assigned a Azure AD device license, which is nothing but the public key here, which device originated. Once this happens, the next step will be Intune device registration. In Intune device registration, what will happen is the device crypto service will again generate a public and private key pair. It will be different from this one. Okay, and this time it will go to enrollment service of Intune that boss, I want to enroll this device to your database. At that point of time, Intune will assign the same public key which the device requested, this public key. Now, after this step, the device will create a entry in uh, Intune database, which is nothing but a Cosmos DB. So what will happen is once this process has completed, you will end up having two entries at 2 points. In Intune, you will see this device as enrolled and giving all those properties. In Azure AD device list also, you will be able to see the device entry. Now the Intune device entry is used for all the future deployments that you are going to do on the device. Okay, device configuration, application deployment, resource deployment, anything that you want to do, it will happen via this entry, this identification, this device identity. Any kind of device authentication, or in case of device compliance conditional access, that will utilize your Azure Active Directory device identity. Okay, so those are the two different things which gets created. Now what happens after that? You have Intune service here, you have let's say you have okay, let me delete that. You have Intune service here, you have the device here. Now what happens if you create a policy? So you created a policy at Intune level saying, boss, I want to block camera on this iOS phone. Now how iOS, which might be anywhere in the world, is able to get your policy and implement that policy? If you understand that flow, you will be able to troubleshoot if you have deployed something and if it's not taking effect. Now what happens? If you have and also little background here, since I already told you that Intune is a collection of microservices which are based on Azure Service Fabric. It basically has different builds which are deployed every month, right? Now in right now you might be having 22 12 December model, right? Where it will give you a build information that, okay, this is the current build that your organization is on. So if new policies are in tune, Microsoft is deploying, it will be deploying on this particular thing. Now, what happens if you created a policy in portal? So let's say if it's an iOS device, iOS will first contact the APNS service. You would have learned this when you understand the iOS enrollment, right? That APNS is important.
Yeah.
Then APNS service will go ahead, wake up the device, and how it will wake up and what on the device it will wake up. It will wake up your device management client. Now the device management, basically this Intune and the iOS, this connection is basically done on OMA DM protocol. Okay, open device management, open device, open device Open Mobile Alliance Device Management Protocol, Open Mobile Alliance Device Management Protocol, okay, OMA DM. So what will happen is it will have a, DM client, device management client, which is nothing but company portal application. So the company portal application here is the device management client. So APNS will come to company portal saying, boss, there is some new payload for you from your Intune service. And the same thing works. Let's say if you have, let's say if there is Swiggy, you order food from Swiggy, and after some time you get a notification on your iOS device saying, boss, there is 50% off or your order is on way. How does that work? Swiggy also contacts to APNS. APN will also contact to this particular device. Basically, in order for iOS device to be contacted, every service has to go via APNS. Now, what happens after that? The APNS will notify iOS device that, boss, the company put an application on iOS device that, boss, there is some new payload from Intune service. Go and talk to the service. Now, the company portal will then come to Intune service saying, okay, here is my check-in. Give me the payload that you want. So it will then drop them a XML based content saying, boss, okay, this is the policy that has been given to you. Please apply this to the device. Now, this will then come down to the company portal application, and the company portal will read it and then uh, redirect its activity to the operating system. That, boss, this is what you need to do. Now, the operating system will say, okay, I have applied that block camera policy on the iOS device, and then it will give the company portal a status update that, okay, this was done successfully. Now the company portal will then update that request to Intune. That's why on the portal you will say pending, status or successful. This is how, until unless company portal has not given the alert, it will always say pending. Once it has given that, okay, boss, this is completed, it will say success. Okay, so
Company
this.
portal, as in say that irrespective of we have, say in case of user affinity, we have the company portal. So one of our places where iPad are kind of in all the shops, we don't have the user affinity for the iPad. So obviously we don't have the company portal there being used. But as you told, they are the brokers. Maybe in the backend, either the Microsoft Authenticator or the company portal, irrespective if they've been explicitly added for the authentication, but still they'll be doing at the backend, isn't it? As a broker doing this job, isn't it?
So the broker at that point of time, I meant for accessing the AAD part. If you're not doing any AAD authentication, you don't have to contact the broker. Okay, so the device management client in iOS, in a scenario where it doesn't work with user affinity, it has nothing to do with company portal. There is another inbuilt client for iOS which talks directly to this kind of services. In the same way where you have in case of Android. Now in Android, you have a new option which is known as Android open source project, where if a device, let's say if you have company portal and let's say if you have Intune service and you have an Android device which doesn't have a uh, uh, which doesn't utilize the Google management services. Now, in that case, what happens is it directly talks to the Android device and is able to communicate directly with the device. There is a different client inbuilt to the device operating system which is capable of understanding that, and the same thing happens on iOS in case of userless affinity. So it's, and the important thing here to notice is it's not this way that you deployed an application, it directly reaches to the device, but it's the other way around. It's always gets notified to the APNS service. If it would have been a Windows, it would notify this to the Windows notification service that, boss, there is something that you need to take, and that Windows notification service would have contacted the Windows machine, and then Windows machine then would have contacted Intune service to get the new thing. Now in case of Windows, this whole thing work with help of CSPs, which are the configuration service provider, which understand what kind of policies are coming down and where I have to put. They basically have a whole complex tree of like, okay, what is the value, where exactly, is it a user policy, is it a device policy where I have to put it. Okay, and if it would have been Android, it would have been the GMS, the Google service, Google notification service, or Google messaging service, where it would have contacted GMS, and GMS would have awakened the device that, boss, there is a new thing, go ahead and contact your internet service. Now in this process, if this channel is broken, your device will not get that policy. So if you have worked with a Chinese customer, this is where things get broken. Now on their Android device, this GMS is not available. The Google Play services are blocked. So in that case, what happens? You triggered something from Intune portal, but that didn't reach the device because the Google Play services were not able to contact the device because this service is not available in China. In that scenario, what happens? The device itself has a fixed amount of interval talking time, like let's say 8 hours. After 8 hours, the device will automatically try to contact the Intune service, and at that point of time, Intune will be able to push the the policy and everything
But
else.
what is the frequency of sync? Like, in case of
8 hours.
8 hours,
eight
in case
hours.
of the hub launcher, or this AirWatch or whatever we say, though we have the sync hub there is
Mhm.
installed in the devices. Where in case of Microsoft, we don't have any such agents or launcher being there to allow any sync as in manual level, other than what we as an admin we can do from the Intune MDM. But from the user level, other than connecting Wi-Fi or the network, and they don't have any other control. So in that case, even you say though, so it's 8 hours from the other end, isn't it?
Eight
Will
hours
be.
on the other hand, if the device is connected to internet. If that device missed that window, then it's the next 8 hour contact.
So that's how even 3 times a day this
Yes.
the sync that happens when we add in the ABM or whatever we are seeing in the enrollment section under the devices, isn't it? I think
Yes.
it's 3 times a
Yes.
day.
And that is not configurable. Till now, they have not allowed. Maybe in future, I don't know. Okay, so that's how it's done. And with respect to with respect to, yeah, and that's why the AOSP, that open Android open source project, was developed, because keeping especially this in mind, that this doesn't have a dependency on the Google Play services. That's why this are the new enrollment method are utilized in case of China and many other projects. Like, you might have a RealWear headset which has an inbuilt camera and is also a Teams MTR device, or as a Teams device, which you can enroll to Intune and deploy policy. Since that doesn't utilize like the Google Play services, you can the Chinese companies can also utilize it and push policies here. Now, the drawback of that is, if the GPS is not available in any country, the instant thing that you wanted to do, let's say you wanted to reset the device, block the device, or the anything which is instant, you have options to do a reset, or if device get lost, those things will not happen, because it will take 8 hours to reach to the device, right? So those are the drawbacks in
But
this
at least
particular.
with the iPhone kind of things, in case of Android, they stopped the Google. But in case of iOS, obviously there should be alternate APNs, right? That should take care of things, isn't it? So it should not be a challenge if they use.
I don't think Apple is blocked in that way fashion there, where like Google is blocked, so they would be able to work.
Okay.
Only the GPS, the Google Play services are blocked there.
Hmm.
So that's the thing.
So, and for today's agenda, I've been told like it is Azure AD and information protection, and then cloud app security, and then advanced threat analytics.
Advanced threat analytics is nothing but Microsoft Defender for identity. If you're just working with Intune, you will. It's very hard that you'll come across Microsoft Defender for identity. But I'll tell you how it works. Let me share my screen again.
And then
That's what I.
identity manager, finally the lab. So that's what I told.
Yeah. And for the lab, they had written implementing Microsoft Intune, how to create a Microsoft tenant,
Hmm.
Intune tenant. Okay, so MDI is basically your. Okay, sorry, my screen was not shared. Are you able to see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so Microsoft Defender for Identity, or also known as Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics, is basically uh, kind of a setup which detects, analyzes signals to your on-premises domain controllers. So let's say if you have an on-premises Active Directory, you have n number of domain controllers. The MDI sensor will be installed on those domain controllers to basically, for the first 24 hours, detect what kind of traffic is happening, what kind of users are, how many number of users are getting authenticated, how many number of file shares are getting access, what kind of applications are doing what stuff, how many kind of tokens are being generated. Okay, so within 24 hours, it will try to see what is the normal condition of your environment. Then it will build a report and it will start reporting all this in the Microsoft Defender for Identity portal. It's but now they have merged everything in Microsoft Defender portal. So Microsoft Defender portal is nothing but security.microsoft.com, where you have access to MDI, MDE. MDE is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which includes your antivirus and all those kind of things. MDI is basically you're protecting your on-premises environment for identity. If there has been a Kerberos attack, if there has been a password spray attack, if there was a golden ticket malicious activity going on, all those things. So these are basically for the security researchers in your organizations who would basically understand the signal and take effect. Now how this will happen: the sensor installed on the DC will monitor all this traffic, the network traffic, SMB logon, account logon, account failure, this is a typical scenario you would see is, let's say if you have created a Azure VM and you have left the RDP port open. Okay, if you have left the RDP port open, many of the bots available on internet will try to bombard your VM trying to log in with dictionary attacks. You would see in the event logs 4624 or 4625 failed or successful logon events that, okay, admin administrator 12345 and all those kind of password spray attack will start happening on your VM. That's why it's said that in order to improve your security posture, you have to take steps, and one of them is never enable RDP to public internet. Okay, now those kind of things are there, but what kind of information are you driving now? So that sensor will detect these kind of events. Like say there was a file share upload happened which was not normal for your environment. Now let's say typically you do a 100 gigabytes of file transfer in your whole environment per day, but one day there was a 700 gigabyte of transport done. Now that will generate an event, and that event will basically turn into an incident and shown in the MDE port and Microsoft Defender for Identity portal that this happened on this particular device. This was the user who did it. This was the file share name, and these were the IP addresses and other things. Now these are the things that you can take actions on. Now the advanced threat analytics was what? It's nothing but the data science, right? You have been given data, you have been given data from your own environment, but in such a way that you can take actions on. Now if this would have been not there, what would you do? A normal scenario would be a security researcher would then prioritize which domain controllers are important and regularly export the events and then manually analyze, okay, how many failed login event had happened and what are the things that happened. This would probably take a whole amount of day, right? Or maybe multiple days to figure out which is important information, which is just noise. Now these kind of security features just make the life of a security researcher easy. That okay, there's a chat, I'm not sure.
Yeah, do you have any GUI based, so it will be easy for us to correlate if you have any test labs or something like that, where
Let's
we know where are the controls of these things, because we never use this. Is that a blade like security? Let me check it.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my portal. And let me know once you see it. Are you able to see it?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I can
Okay.
see it.
Okay. Okay, so this is security.microsoft.com, which is also known as Microsoft Defender. Now, Microsoft Defender comes with different services. One is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, one is Microsoft Defender for Identity, and all other things that you see here is part of Microsoft Defender. Azure AD Identity Protection is part of Azure Active Directory, which gives you malicious intent or anomalies detection. Like if you have this service, you would be able to see if you logged in from let's say India at this time, and suddenly after 5 minutes you logged in from USA. So that's not possible, and that this is the service which is behind those kind of detection, like anomalies detection, right? And Azure Security Center is basically for IAS. You will mostly not work on this because these are the IAS guys who work on this thing. Now when you talk about Microsoft Advanced Threat Protection, this is the name has been changed to Microsoft Defender for Identity, but it's not updated here. So let's go ahead and open the portal. And the most closest to Intune is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint because that's related to device. Now, Microsoft Defender for Identity is for user and user associated login. If you're not working on directly on users, you'll most probably never go to this portal and do stuff here. But if you are working in Intune, you might have interaction with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint because those are responsible for antivirus and malware detection and attack surface reduction and all those kind of things. So we'll go to that as well. Let it just load. And so the setup for Microsoft Defender for Identity is pretty simple. You come to this portal. This is also your domain name .atp.azure.com. If you want to come directly here, this is the URL that you will mention. You'll mention your domain name .atp.azure.com. Okay. Now the first thing that you have to set up is go to directory services, set up any account from your local Active Directory. And mind you, this has to be an on-premises setup because this is a on-premises insight-driven security feature, right? So this has to be an on-premises account which you mention here, and then you will install the sensors which you will download from here. So you will download the sensor on your domain controller, and you will utilize this access key to you use in the setup. So what happens, how you will do is you basically go to a domain controller, go to this website, come here, enter the directory services account, any account. This can be any normal user account, which will become the main account for this sensors. Right now, you will come to this portal, this page. Click on download. Once this gets download, you will start the setup. Once you are on the page of starting the setup, excuse me, it will ask you for the access key. You will give this particular access key because this will be related to your tenant. If you give access key of some other tenant, it will start reporting to some other. So this is a very secure thing which you should not share, especially in the corporate thing. So you will then go complete the setup wizard, and then once you have completed, it will start noticing your environment for the next 24 hours. Okay, it will detect what kind of events are there, what kind of file, all those kind of things which we have discussed. The main thing is then you will come sorry, this service health here. Mine server is stopped, so it's says stopped communicating. But the first time that you have set up, you will have a different number of policies here that you have to enable audit for success and failures. Now, by default, uh, if there is a secure infrastructure oriented you know activities, normally what security researchers would tend to do is enable auditing at your domain controller or Active Directory level. That, okay, boss, enable this group policy of let's say someone tries to log in and was not able to log in. I want to know the success and failures as well. So it will tell you at this point of time, it got refreshed. Basically, it's not shown here, but if this is the first setup, it will tell you what particular group policy is something that you have to apply on your DC so as to enable auditing. Once you enable everything, it will start reporting your service health here. And once those things are ready, it will basically start generating the summary reports here, like modification to sensitive groups, password exposed in clear text, lateral movement passed to sensitive accounts, what happened and what not. And then it will basically be able to build a timeline of like, okay, if someone tried to log in on a domain controller or someone got access or someone got lateral movement, it will start alerting you. But this portal is just basically used for setup, mostly for configuration. The main other thing is always done on Microsoft Defender portal, because this is where you have your threat analytics and incidents and alerts. The incidents are the thing which, let's say, gets recorded if Microsoft Defender for Identity will see, okay, this is a lateral movement that I have detected. It will create an incident for your security researchers to work on. This is not related to uh, uh, the identity. This was related to the Microsoft Defender for Office. So similarly, you will have alerts. If you set up alerts here, you will be able to see what kind of alerts were generated, and then this is the basically functionality to notify the security researcher or admin, whoever is important, to see like, okay, boss, you are having this particular threat, go ahead and investigate. Now, this Microsoft Defender is a full blown cloud solution where it allows you to investigate devices in details. For example, let's say I have installed that MDI client sensor on this particular DC. So this, you'll be able to see what kind of information is able to detect from this. Okay, now it let's say it's able to identify that the security intelligence version on the Windows 2019 server was this. That is the security engine, that is a platform, Defender antivirus mode, whatever. Okay, these are kind of things. And another security recommendations, you'll be able to see n number of recommendations. If it feels that, okay, boss, your device is not BitLocker encrypted, you don't have any LSA protection enabled, your Office application are able to execute content, because in security world, if you are a target of a phishing attack, anyone can send a Office macro, and that can convert into a PowerShell executable at the backend, right? And that is something that you will not be able to detect, because that will be considered as a Office traffic. So if you just use this option, you will be able to understand, okay, I need to block all Office application from creating any executable content, maybe block Win32. So these are all the things which Defender has detected that is not enabled on your server, but should have been enabled if you are concerned about traffic. And it will always give you that, okay, this is related to network, or this is related to operating system, or this is related to accounts, like disable the. So these are the things that you will be able to take control of. Now, let's say you want to block or Office content here. It will give you the things that, okay, what kind of um, feature is that, how to enable it, and if the CC would have been populated with a number, if it would have been related with any known attacks. So Microsoft Defender is also uh, calculating or basically analyzing your environment with respect to already known vulnerabilities out there. So it will tell you how prepared are you with a vulnerability which was discovered 1 month ago. Do you still have that weakness? Do you still have that thing? Software inventory is, again, you'll be able to see things here which are there on your uh, Windows this server. This is basically for one particular thing. You will be able to see, and you will be able to create n number of alerts based depending on your uh, requirement. Now, see, it has already discovered that these many vulnerabilities are present on my domain controller. So if I would not have installed an MDI sensor, I would not be aware, because you would not be going and reading this CVEs every day and then correlating with your whole infrastructure. It's totally impossible without any telemetry. But if you have this, you would basically go here and then see, okay, the boss, what is this about? You will be able to see that vulnerability description is this affects both vendors, Google and Microsoft. What was the vulnerability name? What happened? And then go to related security info recommendations. It will give me a security recommendation that what I need to do. So it's saying that, okay, boss, go ahead and update your Microsoft Edge Chromium based. Um, Basically, go ahead and update my Microsoft Edge. Okay, so these kind of things are not available in Intune, right? These are things that you get with certain kinds of different security features. Now, if you come here, assets is basically the things which are onboarded to Microsoft Defender portal. Now, for this, I think, okay, one
And this
minute.
will come with E5,
This will come with EVE, I guess.
even for
And
admins.
even for admins, yes. On Intune, uh, well, yeah, Intune is not a security. Intune is not a security solution, but for Intune, you can choose to have Intune admin who do not have Intune license but can still log into Intune portal. You have that flexibility. So I'm showing you how the MDE relates to that Intune. Endpoint security.
But even companies, they are, from McAfee, even one of other client, they are going from McAfee out to this Defender soon, for the Windows-based security.
I'll tell you why. Because the Microsoft developed the ecosystem so compact and so insight driven that it's actually easier for you to pay for microservices and gain more insight than depending on third parties. If you depend on third parties, you have to install some sensors from them. Then you have to control, you have to train set of people who are confident enough for McAfee, and then see what McAfee is doing extra, what Microsoft is not doing. But that's not the case now, especially if a security industry utilizes Microsoft Sentinel. On top of this, you gain a single pane of glass across your all infrastructure. It might be coming from your network, it might be coming from your Zscaler proxy server, it might be coming from your on-premise environment, it might be coming from your M365 environment. It will be able to detect anything, and even the zero-day vulnerabilities can be detected with Sentinel. So here is the option where you would have that connection to saying that, boss, if I have enrolled the device to Intune, onboard those devices to Microsoft Defender. Now, what Microsoft Defender brings extra is something that you have already seen. So this is the 2019 Windows Server. These are Windows 11 machines, which I had created for testing. So these are Intune enrolled. I have not done anything else to make them appear here. I just enrolled them into Intune. And then the MD Microsoft Defender for Endpoint was able to detect all this information from here. Okay, it can give you all this state, device AED ID and device ID. This device ID is Intune device ID. This AED device ID is your Azure AD device ID. Now, I'm not sure if it has already extracted the information, but if it has, okay, it has not done yet. So it's okay. Let's check another Windows. I think this was created earlier. So once it has run this inventory, it will be able to detect all those kind of things. Now, if you have to do that in McAfee, I'm not sure how easy it is to do that. But if you're using the complete Microsoft ecosystem, it's actually very easy. You just enroll it once or at one place, and the whole insights gets distributed across the whole security uh, ecosystem. So here you will come down on a Intune enroll devices and see, okay, these are all the things which this is recommending me to, let's say disable the local storage of password and credential. Okay, and maybe it's not set a minimum password length to 14 or more characters. Maybe I have not set it. So what I can do, maybe I can do a Intune configuration policy. I can choose this to do this. And once that is done, then this will get remediated. But this will also tell me what is my exposure level. So this is low. If it would have been high, I would see which are the things which are contributing to that high score of vulnerabilities, and basically fix that point first. Now, assets are basically what? My devices and my identities. If my identity like user related thing, it will also tell here. But how it will tell? If you have that Azure AD Active Directory Premium, which comes with Azure AD Identity Protection, then you will be able to see, okay, which of the users are trying to log into somewhere, or which are the users who are having an anomaly detection captured. Okay, now hunting is very capable uh, tool that has been giving with Microsoft Defender, and this is same for Microsoft Sentinel as well. What it does is it basically utilizes the Custo query. The Custo query is simple, where and you also have Custo access for your Intune, right? If you so if you go to reporting, there are n number of reports which are available. You can use, but you also have log analytics here. I'm not sure if you guys are using it, but this is a very powerful tool which can give or which can build you reporting that you want and which is not available. I have already done that, but if you have not, you will come to the diagnostic setting. You will click on add diagnostic. It basically utilizes your log analytic workspace, which is present in Azure. Mind you, this is not a SaaS solution. This is a infrastructure as a service part where you have to have a Azure license, Azure subscription attached to it. Many of the company does. A normal scenario would be, let's say, I want to have, or I want to know how many of the devices which are present in my infrastructure are running on one particular kind of version. It's easy in Intune. It's by default there, but I'm just giving an example that it basically creates the whole inventory for you. It will create for audit logs, operational logs, device compliance, and devices, and you can archive it for a storage account. This is done mostly in the companies where they have to do audit for years on year basis, where what you can do is you can archive that to, let's say you have a data of 2022. Now 2022 is ending and all the alerts and incidents which were raised, you have taken care of everything. Now you don't just want to get loose of your data, because data is important. You have to see how improved you have got from 22, and then when you are in 2025, you want to see, maybe you want to match something of that what we used to do at that point of time. So you would have to have that Visual Studio subscription and then create a storage account. So these are the storage account that I've created, and then you can submit those things to this storage account, and then it will be archived there, and then you can utilize on later time or whenever you want. If you send it to Log Analytic Workspace, what it does, it basically gives you a capability of doing this kind of stuff, right? Let's say if I have device, okay, let me get rid of this. If I just run a device, okay, if I do a device info, let's see what kind of information it gives you. It has given me all this kind of information. Let's click on any one. So it's able to give me all this kind of information along with many other things which I would not get in this manner in Intune. Maybe I'll not get in Intune, like logged on users information that you can get from here. And you can use that for doing n number of reporting. Let's say the main use of this kind of things is, let's say you discovered, or your network team came to you saying, boss, our company is getting attacked for one particular IP address. So let's say you get a public IP address here, and this is basically a public IP address for this particular VM machine. But I'm just saying that if your network, if your Zscaler would have connected your uh, logs to Microsoft Defender, it would be able to track which all devices are getting contacted from there. So it will give you an entry of all those devices which are being contacted from that malicious IP address, and then you can then write many other queries in Custo format, that where device info and where public IP address is equal to this, and then show me which all devices are uh, getting affected. So similarly, I'm not sure if your current company needs you to basically utilize this path or not, but you can certainly play around with this, because this is a very powerful tool which gives you a number of things and is also capable of doing the reportings. So let's see what kind of information does device eventscapes. I'm not sure if although it should have collected few things. Yeah, like this. So this is the information that you will not get in Intune, right? That which process was created, which particular thing was accessed. Let me see, open process API called. Let's see what it's talking about. So when I clicked on that, it took me back to the device portal, and then there is no alert. Basically, if there had been alert related to that, it would have given me what kind of alert was that. Go Hunt is another good option where you already identified there's one particular application is causing problems. You can click on just Go Hunt and it will take you to the Kusto query again to find the common devices which were having the problem. Now, any question on this one?
No, that's fine.
Okay. The other important thing is with respect to M365 ecospace is Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which was also known as Microsoft Cloud App Security earlier. What you used to do is, if you click on Cloud Discovery, it would have, it's my lab, so it might not give much things, but let's see if it has discovered something. If it's an environment, if you log into this place, you would be able to see which all the applications are being used by your end users. So the IT admin might not have approved it, or the IT admins might not be aware that your users are logging into those particular application or your corporate machines or Intune enrolled machines, or even normally with your or updating their or uploading their files. Or okay, so it's not here because it's not built, it has not built it, but in a full-blown environment you'll be able to see the list of all the third parties application and first party, that is Microsoft also, where your users will be logging. The cloud app catalog is basically gives you a list of applications which are most probably which has more probability of being utilized by your users. So if it loads, you'll be able to see the section where it will tell you, okay, if it's a productivity app, if it's a streaming app, or if it's a multimedia application, or if it's a healthcare app, and then it will basically tell what kind of security features are associated or where exactly this application lacks. So it has n number of capabilities of detecting that, okay, if my users are using Dropbox, the Dropbox company is not updating their software on regular version, or it has a rest score of this, or they are utilizing a piece of architecture which is not very much compliant with security industry. It's not loading up. So all those things would be
It's going
there.
to be with the Defender and these Intune Duo co-management and all in the upcoming years. Maybe a major stakeholder when it comes to end user computing, and that also includes not only the Windows WVD, also the handheld devices, right? With all these options.
So this is a separate thing from Microsoft Intune.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But as an identity, what we are discussing the
Oh,
topics
okay.
today,
Okay.
but as in Defender perspective, but that also comes into the ecosystem of Microsoft, right?
Yes, definitely.
Safety. After than the usage, one such pillar, the safety is what important, isn't it?
Yes. So just an example that you have all these categories like IT services, account finance, productivity. Let me see if we can see. Let's see CRM. So CRM has 736 listed applications where you might find first party like Microsoft Dynamics and all those things which are utilized in CRM. And here are the scores basically. The risk score is 10 minutes, it's secured. If you see a risk score of, let's say, from ascending order, let's see. So there are these third party companies or third party application, which if your users are using, they are not that much secure. Why that not secure? Now you'll be able to see here. They don't have an IP address restriction. User can upload the data. The they are not patching. The Heartbleed was a recent known attack vector, and they are not patched for that. They don't have a valid certificate name. They are not utilizing the HTTP security headers. They don't support SAML. They don't support trusted certificate. So if your uh, data or if your users goes to this particular application, it's very high chance that via this application your data might be getting leaked, right? Like the SolariGate incident that happened. it was a very good vendor for Microsoft and many other companies where the people were utilizing their software to keep doing their daily jobs. But the hackers were so smart to put the malware and those kind of things in their system and then utilize those resources where the normal security system would not be able to understand that, okay, what is happening. So this is the place where if you're a security guy, you would say, okay, let's say it's a POS simplicity or a Collabrel is an application. And if you see this application getting accessed somewhere in the Custo query or in Sentinel, you will basically create rules for this that, okay, in your environment, is somebody using this? If somebody is using this, how can I block this? If they are using it on their personal device, you cannot block it. But what you can do, you would have to make sure that you secure your data in such a way that the protection goes with data. But if these would be accessed on, let's say, Intune managed device, you would be in a much better position to control this, because you might say this, okay, boss, block all the application, allow only this, or block all these URLs and allow only this via edge, right? Those kind of things are the things which you can take care of. Cloud storage is the most common thing that people tend to log on to and utilize, right? So let's say who are the highest scorer on this.
And even with the MAM scenario, we cannot able to control much,
So the
only our
MAM
part.
is user based, right? You always apply MAM to user. You do not apply MAM to data. That means what? If your data is out of your user identity control, you cannot control the leak. Are you getting my point?
Yeah.
It's only unintentional data leak that you can control via few of the features. But if you have to control insider threat, there is no way, because employees will find a way anyway. If you're not giving them so what you can control, you have to follow a zero trust approach. What? That you don't trust the device, you don't trust the user, you don't trust the data, you don't trust the apps. So to protect the device, what will do? You will make sure that you have a conditional access. You will make sure that they are security hardened. How will make sure that there's a security hardened? You will apply lots of restrictive policies from Intune or from SSEM, that boss, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this. Now, if your user is only having that device, he's stuck, he can't do anything. But if he has another device which is not Intune enrolled and is able to access the same data there, then what you will do? Then maybe you can apply a conditional access that for accessing this data, you have to have your device compliant. And in order to you have to have your device compliant, you have to enroll your device to Intune, right? So that way you'll have to control. So user, uh, device, application, and data. If you control these things, you have pretty much controlled your 99% of security infrastructure, because the rest 1% is, let's say, those are the hackers, right? Though those are looking for vulnerabilities in this kind of things, which nobody can. Even Microsoft with this never commits that you will be 100% safe proof. They can prepare you for that. Okay, boss, if you have to happen at the point of fact where your ransomware attacked, you must have this best practices. What? That you have to regularly update your data to OneDrive, right? They never say that they will prevent you 100% from ransomware. Nobody can say that. The next day, maybe there might be some very state operated, state funded hackers group which comes up and they try to force directly on your supply chain management. Maybe you'll not be able to do anything if you're not prepared, if you're not controlling these kind of things, right? So this is how everything comes together to restrict user that, okay, boss, this is my corporate data, this is my company data, you have to only access it via this device, otherwise I'm not giving you access. Or you have to make sure that you log into this application, then only you will be able to access the data. And there you might have an option like log into application, and then once the user login, maybe you apply a MAM policy. And with MAM policy, the user cannot share to any other non-managed app. The user cannot take screenshot. The user cannot copy it. The user cannot do anything. But that is unintentional. If it's intentional, The user can simply take a different phone and take a picture of that and then send, right? So it's an
Yep.
unintentional thing where you have to make sure that it's coming. But for this also, the team says coming up with a feature where if you take a picture, it will then have your mobile screen will capture a watermark of saying on whose screen it was captured. So those are the future things which Microsoft is bringing, that okay, to make those things also difficult, to basically what, find a culprit that who has done it, right? You can't do, if the data is gone, it's gone. If you're ransomware attacked, maybe in 30 minutes your data will be in dark web for the different companies or different other people to buy it, right? So those are the things. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that or any doubts that you have. While I'm this part, let me also show you Sentinel. I'm a big fan of Sentinel, and if you are working, it's great. And if you're not, try to find time to,
Mm.
do that. I'll stop the recording.
Yep. Thank you.